side all the way to the line. This is the triple.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, March 14th, 5:15, and we are at the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee of the City of Wausau. And welcome. We'll go on to agenda item number 1, approval of the minutes for February 8th and February 13th meetings. Do we have any discussion on them, or do we need a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, thank you, Alder Rasmussen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, thank you, Alder Gisselman. Motion has been made to approve the minutes of the previous meetings, and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Item number 2, discussion and possible action on the sale of 902 and 904 West Thomas Streets. Bids were opened and it was in the packet, so I'll open it up for discussion. Anybody see that the bid in the packet was $250? Do you think that's the only bid we got? Should we go with that? Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like, yes, we don't have to take care of them anymore, and then they return to the tax roll and return back to the private sector, so I think we should accept those offers. I make a motion that we approve those and proceed with the sale.
Okay, thank you, Alder Rasmussen.
I'll second.
Second by Alder Hinkie. A motion has been made and seconded on the possible action and sale of 902, 904 South Thomas Street. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. Discussion and possible action, item 3, discussion and possible action on 15-minute parking spaces on the south side of Washington Street between 2nd and 3rd Streets. I looked at this and I'm not sure how to go on this. It says I think it would be a good idea maybe to try it for a year and see what happens. I'm opening for discussion. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. We did real well when we put a couple of 15-minute stalls mid-block along 3rd Street when we had a need for businesses that have quick service like carry-out and pickup. During the pandemic, when people were picking up so much carry-out, we had worked on making sure that we had those spots cycling out faster than 2 hours. So we put a couple in front of Chow, and down the block, there's a couple more. I think that helps that, not every stall is 15 minutes, but if you get 2 or 3 that are quick service places, like now they've put Jimmy John's in that Washington Square building to get in and out quick and not have those spots be tied up for 2 hours, I think would be helpful. If we could do a couple, did it say they wanted 3?
3, yes, correct.
3. I think there's 3 on the 3rd Street block in front of Chow and Polito's and Lemongrass and that.
Right.
Isn't there?
There are 3.
Yeah. I mean, it seems fair that we would try it. It's not taking every stall, but it would help with some.
I'm not sure where Jimmy John's is. Is it right around the corner or is it right on 3rd Street?
It's in Washington Square, but it's on the south side of the building, facing the
Yeah, so
Imaginarium.
those other 3 spots that we have by Polito's and stuff wouldn't
Probably
wouldn't
not well.
serve them.
Yeah, and the customers from the other places have them all filled, so.
Is this something we'd want to try for a year? I mean, depending on what developments and stuff go downtown and how the parking changes, or is this something you would want to revisit or make it permanent?
I feel like, well, the other ones are permanent along 3rd now, right? We didn't,
Right.
they're permanent. So I feel like we should just do them permanent. And if we find that we have a need to reclaim them for a longer time, or the makeup of the tenants and the residents changes, we always could revisit it later. But I think we're at least 2 years away from a high-volume residence unit there, so.
Okay.
I guess why I brought it up is Washington Street is scheduled to be reconstructed in '25, next summer. And then the plan as of now is parallel parking on both sides. So I guess we could revisit at that time, because I don't,
Yes.
with two-way traffic in there and parallel parking on both sides, they'd probably want some of those 15-minute stalls on the other side of the street. So
Sure.
when that gets reconstructed. So
Well-
I think we either put a sunset date or we just, I guess when the street gets reconstructed, we can revisit it.
Okay.
Here, I'll make a motion that we approve 3 15-minute parking stalls in that block with the directive to staff that we reevaluate the parking along that street when the street construction is complete or reconstruction is complete. Then we can look at all of it.
Alder Gilselman?
Well, a question, I have a, thank you, with regard to the other merchants on Third Street, especially in Washington Square, some dining place, although that dining was mostly an evening issue, but what about some of the other merchants that may depend on 2-hour, and I guess I'm torn a little bit because as we grab more 15-minute spots, that means that 2-hour parking for the longer-term merchants is going away. I'm not, how many 2-hour then would we have along that stretch of the south side of Washington from basically 2nd Street all the way up to, what, 4th maybe?
Yeah.
I'm sure I maybe have that in front of me, but there's quite a few, I would think.
There's still a lot of 2-hour. I know Blake is here with the River
There's a
District.
lot. Is there like, there's
So I don't know
got to
if you
be at
want to
least
hear
20
from,
stalls there.
if you
I
want
would
to hear
think.
from Blake, maybe he has a better input on that.
How many of those angle parking stalls are there in total?
So I don't have a number on the
Approximately
exact
40.
stalls. 40, okay.
40?
Yes.
So we'd have 37 left.
So
Okay.
quite a supply there. I do just want to note on, this doesn't just benefit Jimmy John's. We also do have, we talked about business turnover. So we do have the Chocolate Cafe that just opened up, another coffee shop where people can come in, pick things up and go. And then we do have a tailor that just opened up on the 2nd floor of Washington Square as well. So this wouldn't solely just benefit Jimmy John's, but those 3 other businesses as well. Yep.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
Of course.
Thanks, Blake.
Alder Hinkie?
Thank you. The parking ramp is also a half a block down there, and every time I go in there, it's empty. But
I guess, would we want to maybe put some signage there for during business hours only? I mean, is Jimmy John's, are they open late, like till 9 o'clock at night or something? Or, I mean, so,
Well, we don't enforce parking after 5 anyway, do we ever?
I thought it was 6, but
6?
I'm not sure.
So it is kind of just during the day already.
Right.
so if anybody wanted to come for like a show at the Grand Theater or dine at Jalapenos or something, the 15-minute parking is null and void, basically, correct?
After 6.
And that's
Yeah.
how it is for Politos and all that as well.
Yep.
I'm okay with that. Yes, Alder Hinkie.
I'll second Alder Rasmussen's motion.
All right. Alder Gilselman, any more?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Okay, discussion, we've got a motion and a second on the action, discussion, possible action on 15-minute parking spaces for south side of Washington Street between 2nd and 3rd Street. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed, that passes. Thank you. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action on preliminary resolution to set a public hearing to vacate an area of right-of-way south of Adams Street abutting 1012 and 1010 Everest Boulevard and 1100 Highland Park Boulevard. Alan?
So we got a petition on this. This is just to set the public hearing, so that would give a chance for everybody to come in and, so I don't know how much we want to discuss it here, but basically, if you would approve that, we'd have the public hearing in 2 months, I believe, by the time the notices go out, so. If you want to discuss it more, we can, but this is just to set that public hearing.
Alder Hinkie?
Thank you. Is this the alley that had that shed built on it?
Yes, this is, if you probably recognize it, this is would be on the right side of your paper. They're right, we gave an easement to keep those sheds there because one homeowner did not want to vacate. But now the ownership has changed out there and they all want to vacate now. So that's why this is coming forward. They all signed it, so it should be,
I'll move to set the public hearing date.
Yeah, a motion has been made to approve the vacate of these properties. Do I have a second? Or any further discussion? Alder
Well,
Gishman?
the motion was to set a public hearing.
Oh, yeah, I
Just
didn't
so,
quite.
I mean, we aren't
Okay.
approving, just so that, I'll second that.
All right. I didn't hear you quite well, so we've got a motion to set a public hearing on this agenda item. All those in favor signal, and seconded by Alder Gishman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and that will go to public hearing then. Number 5, discussion and possible action on installing sidewalk on the south side of West Wausau Avenue from Stevens Drive to North 10th Avenue. Alan, this is yours.
Yes, we also have Stephanie Christensen in the office from EMCS. She's our design consultant. So if we have any questions for Stephanie when we go through this, we can definitely get her expertise on this too. So as the write-up says, this is a DOT project that we receive STP urban funding for. It's scheduled for construction in '26. EMCS is going through preliminary design now. A public informational meeting was held here at City Hall. Unfortunately, there was not very good attendance. There was a chance for the public to comment. The only person in attendance was a representative of the Wausau West School District, which we had discussed this with before. So I can kind of go over some of the comments that were received. So there was nobody at the public hearing other than the school district. Just to kind of, the Wausau School District is not generally in favor of sidewalk on the south side. They feel that if people were to use the sidewalk on the south side, we'd probably have to stripe a crosswalk somewhere to get them from the south side to the north side. Probably on that, you can see the main entrance where it crosses, that concrete crosses. We probably have to stripe a crosswalk there, and that would interfere with their bus drop-off area. And they didn't see a big need for it. The other public, we did get a letter from the owner of 1303 and 1309 West Wausau Avenue. They are not in favor of the sidewalk. Basically, they're citing safety issues and security issues if they have sidewalk on their side. So they were not in favor of the sidewalk. There was also one letter from the general public of someone who walks the area, and they said that they were also not in favor of the sidewalk, that there's other areas of the city that deserve sidewalk more than the south side of West Wausau Avenue. Also recently, Stephanie was in, although they did not show up at the public hearing, she had a chance to talk to the principal at Newman, Carl Fetch. And if you look on your map there, that's the back side of Newman, all those athletic fields on the south side. So almost half of this project would, the sidewalk would abut the backside of Newman and their athletic fields. So it was felt it important that we get the comment from them, and they are not in favor of the sidewalk. They say that there's a fence on the backside of Newman there, and they don't utilize that backside to get into their soccer complex very much. That the asphalt parking lot back there is basically for maintenance and very little use. So they were not in favor of sidewalk back there because they did not feel they would get a lot of use out of it. So we did not receive any comments in favor of the sidewalk. They were all, the two school districts, Wausau West was a little more neutral, but didn't see a need for it, and Newman was more against it. And I guess just as from a design standpoint, if you look at the sidewalk along here, there's not like a beaten path on the south side, so I don't think people are walking on the south side now. Some places where we don't have sidewalk in the city, you can see a beaten path and there's people using it. I don't see that a lot. So from that standpoint, I don't think people are trying to use it now. As far as the continuity standpoint, if you go to the left side of your paper or to the west side of Stevens Drive, the sidewalk does not continue on the south side there. So if there was sidewalk on the other side of Stevens Drive, it might make some more sense to, for continuity. But just wanted to make you aware that to the left side, there is no sidewalk on the south side. that continues on that way. So those are the public comments we received and kind of the engineering behind it. So I guess we're looking for a recommendation from this, body if we want to discuss it, how we want to move forward if proposed sidewalk or not.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I am actually through this area multiple times a day. And so knowing that this was under design, I have kind of been keeping an eye. The sidewalk on the north side, on the school side, is used. I don't see a lot of people walking that left side either, or that south side either, where there is nothing. They cross Stevens Drive, they cross over to the north side, and they use the north side. I agree with the safety concerns about a mid-block crosswalk there. I think we have the authority to stripe a crosswalk at Wausau Avenue and at 10th and not do one in the middle, but I don't know that that would necessarily deter people from crossing just because it's not painted. I think logically, people would think that they could cross there because they see that entrance point. So I think that we should keep the sidewalk where it is today on the north side. As long as on most streets, I've always felt like as long as we have it on at least one side where there's a safe place for pedestrians to navigate, but when we have it on neither side, that's when we run into trouble. So I would support keeping the sidewalk on the north side and not installing it on the south side. And that also then I think would keep our costs down a little bit as well on the project.
Thank you. Alder Hinkie.
Thank you. So this is a DOT project. Is there any requirements from the DOT to have a sidewalk on both sides? Are there points or point system or something where that helps us?
No, there's no requirement. It just as part of the application that I made, we said we would look at it and possibly, at the time when you're making the application for the funding, you look at it just for pedestrians and bicycle accommodations and such. But, as we got into it further and with the public informational comments, it kind of works itself out.
Okay. I agree with Alder Rasmussen then.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I agree with Alder Rasmussen then. I mean,
I sort of do too.
Just the north side
Not
is
sort of
fine.
do, I do. Alder Gisman, do you have anything
Well,
on this?
question, is there street parking on the south side?
There is street parking on the south side from basically where that Newman fence starts to the east. So there's no parking in front of those houses on the south side.
But students are parking on that eastern half. When you get past the houses,
Correct.
almost all the way to 10th Ave, they're parking there. Students, the ones that don't want to pay for a parking permit in the student lot are parking in the street there. And they're also parking on Stevens Drive.
But there is a sidewalk on the east side of Stevens Drive, right, going north and south.
Correct. On Stevens Drive, there is sidewalk on both sides going north and south. But to the left side of your, going further west
Off
on
the-
West Wausau Avenue, there
Off
is
the-
not sidewalk.
There isn't off the map.
There is on the north side, but not on the south side.
I just have a question too. What is the estimated cost for this sidewalk and what is the city's portion if we do decide to do this?
Well, the cost apportionment is a 70-30 split, so the city, and it's going to depend on where the project comes in. We're capped out, I believe, at $1 million, somewhere around there for this project. So, cost isn't the only thing, but I think we just ran some preliminary numbers and to put sidewalk on that side without, you're probably going to have to move that fence for Newman. You're going to run into more real estate issues, but just the sidewalk itself is about $100,000. And then the real estate costs, but I think we should, obviously keep our decision more on the continuity of it. But you are right, there are costs.
Well, I agree with you, Alan. There are costs and we should keep it on a continuity, but Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I think then too, also what happens then is when you put that sidewalk in there where it isn't today, you also then impact the driveway length and the front yard length and size on all those homes that are along there too. You have different takings as far as what, and then of course, all of those homeowners then are going to have sidewalk to maintain, which, we know that they all love. So I'll make a motion that we proceed with sidewalk on the north side of West Wausau Avenue and omitted on the south side.
So, okay, but the north side, that would be to the right on the map, is that correct? So it's not in front of the houses?
It's in front of the school. It's on the school side.
Okay, yeah,
It would be the yellow shaded.
Oh,
So
the
there-
yellow shaded,
yes.
okay.
So there is sidewalk on
Yeah.
the yellow shaded now. We would just be putting back that sidewalk. There is not sidewalk on the south side. We
Oh,
just
okay,
wouldn't be
gotcha.
putting that in. So we would be basically leaving it as it is when we reconstruct it.
okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion has been made by Alder Rasmussen and second by Alder Hinkie to not put a sidewalk on the south side of the road. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No, any opposed? Oh, no opposed, so that motion passes. Item number 6 is discussion and possible action on CISM committee duties and responsibilities.
Good evening,
Hi,
Mr.
Ann.
Chair. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
So I handed out to everybody because I was running short of time, and I will admit nothing's in the packet, and there was a lot of material. So rather than piling up again the minutes from all the CISM meetings that happened before this and the ED meeting, I gave you all a copy of my notes, actually, and a very rough draft of an ordinance. So on January 11th, this committee discussed the duties and the responsibilities and the possible overlaps and interconnections with other committees. And I was asked to prepare a draft of the city's or the committee's duties and responsibilities. And that's when I did the January memo for your February 8th meeting, where we included the 1966 report and the website description and all the references in the code, et cetera, which described all of those duties. And the one that's on the website right now is almost verbatim to the 1966 report duties, but then it was called public property and capital maintenance or something like that. So, or capital improvement. So it was they were all completely different committees with different titles, obviously, way back then. So I first brought you the draft ordinance you have in front of you on February 8th, but with a few less changes. To direct proposals to sell property directly to the CISM committee rather than the council first. That was the first amendment we made, just to make the process a little shorter. So instead of going council, CISM council,
Correct.
we said we'd send those directly anyway. And then we added a section at the end requiring the ED committee to report to the CISM committee regarding the sale of any property pursuant to their property disposition program. Well, last week on March 7th, then, I don't know how many of you watched or read the ED packet, but ED met and reviewed a revamp of that property disposition program, which clarified that the committee would recommend to council the purchase of land for redevelopment purposes other than for municipal purposes, which was a very good defining factor, and the sale of developable properties through an RFP process approved through that committee. Such projects consisting of more than a 4-unit non-owner occupied housing development or other type of commercial or mixed-use development. And they continued to say that sale of lots to adjoining owners would be exempt from the procedures outlined in Chapter 312, which you followed tonight on those two parcels. They would be exempt from that, and rather than soliciting bids, the city assessor would look at other properties and set the value or the sale price for those properties. So this evening, and that hasn't yet been adopted by council because their property disposition program was just presented on March 7th. So as I look at all the last meetings of your 6 standing committees, tonight I think is the last CISM meeting before the term is over. And we're coming up on closing in on some of these committee descriptions. So I don't know that they're all going to get adopted during this term. But what I have for you tonight then is an updated draft of the ordinance. The property disposition program is slated to go to council on March 26, which will be adopted by resolution. But again, I'd like to see a lot of these duties codified in the ordinance. So the highlights now of that ordinance are we've added back in and we've changed the title of Chapter 3.12 to purchase or sale of city-owned real estate. So any request or proposal for a purchase, we've added back in, sale or leasing of real property by the city will be directed to capital improvements and street maintenance first. The only sales not subject to the following procedure would be sales of lots to adjoining owners. I just put in there such lots will be deemed undevelopable by the zoning inspector. That can be changed. Tammy, I think, had in her proposed program, as long as they were deemed undesirable. Well, I don't know how to put that into an ordinance, so I kind of tweaked that language a little bit and said that if it were not buildable as determined by, you couldn't put any name in there, but we have to define that a little bit. And then I put in there that the committee can make recommendations to council for the use or disposition of vacant or unutilized property and may recommend the acquisition of real property for municipal purposes. And then I left the Economic Development Committee report in there if you still want that one on their other property sales. And there's a little tweak in the end on the second page, but that's really the meat of it. So CISM would receive proposals or requests not only for the sale or lease of city-owned property, but for the purchase as well, with the following exceptions I've noted in my notes: purchase of an adjoining lot, sale of land in the business campus, which I think still says industrial park in the ordinance, and sale of land acquired by the city for purposes other than municipal purposes. So, and I wanted to remark too, we talked about it a little before the meeting, but your minutes were very lengthy from the last meeting, and I think they're probably in your packet, but Alder Rasmussen had recommended the name of the committee be changed to Infrastructure and Facilities. So I think this encompasses all the suggestions that have been made over your last 2 or 3 meetings, and certainly welcome to just chew on it, pass it on to council, or decide to hold it until the next term, at which maybe the whole council could adopt as part of your rules under 216 more defined responsibilities of each committee.
Thank you, Ann. I think, in my humble opinion, that we should probably move forward with this and get this before the next council is installed, because they won't have a clue what's going on, and so I'm going to open that up for discussion. We've talked, Ann and stuff, I'm okay with the changes. I think that if, we don't need to have the Economic Development Committee report to us for their business. I think if the CISM committee were just to be responsible for the properties being bought and sold for municipal purposes, I would be okay with that.
Okay.
And let the Economic and Development Committee do the rest, so that we're not interfering with their work. And I'll
I'll take
open
a
it up.
seat, but I'll come back up and
I'll
take
open it up for discussion with that. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I agree with that. I think that where we want to be involved is when land is being either, acquired, well, especially, we've always been involved in some of the sale, but acquired for public use, public purposes, public facilities, which then essentially removes property from the tax roll as well. So I think that's right. I think we want to be involved in acquisitions for municipal facilities for sure. The reason that I had proposed the change in the committee name was because sometimes there's confusion. We do a lot more than street maintenance here. And sometimes when we talk about capital projects, there's confusion there because people don't understand first what they are and where that conflicts with CIP, because that's now a separate advisory committee. And so the county calls their similarly working group an infrastructure committee. We had talked about changing that name back when we took on the work of the Parking and Traffic Committee as well. We weren't sure what to call ourselves, but we ended up staying the same. But the other thing that's never really had a committee oversight home is facilities. Typically when facilities have needs, they land in finance because it all needs money, but no one ever talks about facilities or long-term maintenance plans or replacement plans or any of that. It's homeless. And so I thought if we would take this committee and call it what it really does, infrastructure and facilities, then there's no question as far as anything that has to do with a facility, building one, fixing one, getting rid of one, whatever, that would come right here. And everyone would know that. because we would be in charge of facilities. And infrastructure is a broad-based category, but we seem to do all of it here anyway. So I figured that was, it seemed clearer for the public, and it seemed more clear for new members to understand kind of what they're getting into. It's less confusing, I thought.
And the name would be what again?
Infrastructure and facilities,
So infrastructure would include streets
for sure.
in that
Yep.
infrastructure.
And
Okay.
bridges and
Yeah,
right-of-way
yeah.
and all of that. And then facilities is all things facilities. And that way,
Mm-hmm.
we are in the loop then too. So if there's a large-scale remodel on a municipal building, we'd be involved there too. So we could talk through things and costs and, otherwise, all that stuff was just funneling to finance with a price tag. And there wasn't really any digging into the nuts and bolts of what the work would be. So,
Thank you. Any more to, Alder Henke?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm okay with changing the name. As far as staying out of the Economic Development Committee's way, would we strike B then from this ordinance? Is that what you were thinking, Chair?
I was thinking that too, yeah,
Okay.
where it's down by B, where it says the Economic and Develop Committee shall report to the capital improvements, maintenance. I don't think we need that. And
Okay. And then I just had one question for Tammy.
Tammy, would you like to come forward?
Any comments, any thoughts? This kind of crosses into your area.
No,
so.
thank you for asking. I appreciate that. We worked with Ann closely on preparing our policy, so I feel very comfortable with how this proposes. The only question might come up is, we're talking about possible purchasing a property for our multifamily through ARPA funds. So then I get a little confused going, well, is that a public facility? Is it a economic development, redevelopment? But, there's going to be certain things that are confusing.
But it's not
That's
a
our life.
municipal building, so
But
I
it's
would
not
say
a
no.
municipal building.
for our purposes, I think we were talking about things like police departments, fire departments,
Correct.
DPW
Yeah,
garages,
yes,
this
correct.
building, this building,
Yes.
stuff like that,
Okay.
so.
No, I'm
Yes.
very comfortable with how she's written it, yes. But thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
Alder Gisman?
What else is there besides municipal, it says acquisition of real property for municipal purposes? What else do we buy land for?
We buy land for redevelopment. I mean, we just bought that land.
Well, I sort of get that, but is there other land or things that we buy that, I don't know. I'm just wondering if something is going to slip, but maybe, obviously, maybe not. So I guess you're answering my question. With the purchases that economic development for, those all come before the city council also as a final vote.
Right, I would imagine they all would, because you're buying like riverfront property or something to, not for a municipal purpose or for municipal ownership, but to acquire it because it's blighted, or to redevelop it, or to RFP it, or contract out to sell it to a private entity to do something else with it. And there's always a financial component to that. I mean, we have to sell the property, and I think the procurement policy requires that the sale of any city property goes through council, so I've got to believe they're all
Well,
getting
mostly
approved
concerned
anyway.
about the
Right.
the
Right.
purchase.
So it's either residential and commercial redevelopment purposes, or municipal purposes means, like Lisa explained, either owned by the city or used for a municipal building or purpose. So I can't think of anything that would fall into any other category, so I think that's a good determinative factor.
So, for instance, parks, that would be a municipal purpose.
Yes, if they were acquiring property to dedicate as a park, that would be owned by the city. Yep,
Okay.
yep. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that would fall under So it could either go to Parks, depending on what happens to the Parks Committee, and/or CISM, because it would be acquired for municipal purposes. And there's another reference under Chapter 21, which talks about plats for subdivisions where it comes to CISM. There's a reference in there that you get to decide if any part of that plat has to be dedicated for municipal purposes, but that only applies to subdivision plats. That's why I thought 3.12 needed to be amended.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Long-winded answer, but I think we've covered all of the possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Rasmussen.
So with that, you were talking about green space dedication within a subdivision, right? So when somebody comes in with a plat and they have to dedicate a certain amount of green space for neighborhood park use, and then I think there were some caveats by which they could get out of that obligation, but that's what you were talking about,
Yep,
right?
and parkland, right, and, or other public use. I think there's two separate provisions under 21.
Yeah.
0.60080 or something
Well,
like
and
that, but it
those plats come
talks
here
about Plan Commission too
anyway.
and CISM, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like we've got it pretty well covered, really.
think so,
mean,
too.
I think you've,
I do too. I think we've discussed this, and I think we've come to a pretty good conclusion. I just think that we, would, need a motion to possibly strike that 3.12.010B, where the Economic and Committee, where the Economic and Development Committee shall, report to us. We don't need that. And B, we might need a motion and a second if you want to change the committee's name, I think.
yep. I'll make a motion that we accept the draft that Ann has brought us today with the removal of item B under 3.12.010, referencing Economic Development Committee reporting to this committee. And then included in that motion also then is a change of name for this committee to now be called Infrastructure and Facilities, to begin with the commencement of the April council term.
Excellent.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor by Alder Rasmussen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Hinkie. Okay, so a motion has been made to strike the Economic and Development Committee shall report to the capital improvements. We'll strike that from the ordinance, and a motion for a name change has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And none opposed? And thank you all, and
Thank
thank
you,
you very
committee.
much, Ann, for
Thank you.
all the work you've put into this.
We'll get that ready for March 26th council then.
Okay, thank you. Item number 7 is update on the 17th Avenue Railroad crossing. None, huh?
No, there is an update.
Okay.
So council obviously passed that resolution. Actually, today, the attorney's office, they had prepared a letter for the mayor, and the mayor actually signed it. And Tara uploaded that to the electronic system for the railroad. So as of today, we did officially make the petition to the railroad to determine the adequacy of those signals. So what I've been told in my conversations with legal at the OCR is it's possibly a 3-month. There won't actually be a hearing because it's really not contested. So they'll just announce their findings, and they'll send us their findings along with who's paying for it. So probably a 3-month wait.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
You bet.
On to
Lou,
item
Lou,
number...
Lou, can I just,
Oh, sure.
thank you. Another update, I heard the horns last night, very late, blowing very loud, and then I saw one of the arms on First Avenue. They were doing maintenance on it. I don't know if someone hit it or what went on there, but, so it's still an issue. So I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, then we will move on to item number 8. Update on proposed fleet maintenance facility property. I guess we all know that we're not going to go to West Street as of today. And I guess in looking through this, we kind of, none of these properties really jump out at me. I was talking to Eric prior, I think we should possibly consider looking at the Menard site, the old Menard site, or possibly the Westwood Drive site, but I'm open for discussion. Paul Rasmussen.
Thank you. I don't know that Westwood Drive is up for sale for public purpose. I think the owner is planning to redevelop or sell all of that for commercial use. But, yeah, I can't begin to say how disappointed I am with the way the negotiation on West Street went, because I had high hopes for that site, both to clean up the way it looks today, put something there of value or higher value, and then, that just did not go our way. As far as what do we know about the Menard site? Is that even available? Because that's been sitting an awfully long time.
Yeah, I believe it's still for sale. I haven't inquired on it at all, but I can certainly do that with any direction that you give me.
Okay. Well-
And then if it is, we could bring some options back. There are some challenges with it. I did kind of showed it in the packet. It's kind of an odd shaped property. I don't know how things would fit on there, but it is about 6 acres, so that's about what we're looking at. And then also access to and from and things like that. Obviously, we'd have to look at from a civil standpoint, but it's one of those properties we said, that we would like to see at least 6 acres, because that's kind of the space that we need, so.
Right, and it is in town versus on the outskirts. I think staff had some concerns about being too far out to have to keep going back and forth for materials and whatnot, so.
It does start getting far. I mean, it's obviously closer than the business campus, but yeah.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Some of those other
But
properties.
that's maybe about as far west as anybody. I mean, the business campus is too far, and then even that one we looked at that was out near Z was
Right.
so far east.
Yeah.
And it's nothing but
Yep.
hills to get up there. I mean,
Right.
To get out of the city is a problem. So, I don't know. I feel like it would be reasonable to at least ask some questions about that Menard site. It's, that at one point, they did cut a little bit of an access driveway or something off of 28th Ave into there.
They did, yes.
So I really thought something was going to happen then, and then nothing came. So, I don't know.
They built that just with the intention to make it saleable.
Oh,
The Menards parcel built that. The county controls that, so they went and got a driveway permit from the county and a permit to modify the median. So, yeah, they built that with the idea to help them sell the parcel.
and it doesn't seem to have helped much because it's still there. So,
Right.
I don't know. I think it would be worth inquiring about, because all of the other options we looked at before, there were sound reasons that we didn't want them, and I don't know. I mean, the one that we ruled out, that will never be a viable option anymore, I feel like, because no matter what we would do with that, the neighborhood will be very upset. I mean, Cleveland. If we ever went back to talk about Cleveland, I think we would just, reignite a fire. So I don't feel like I just don't feel like that would ever be accepted in that neighborhood. It was a
I agree.
non-starter, right? I mean, even if we would clean it up to residential standard, I don't think they care. I don't think they're ever going to want it there. And to look at acquiring property adjacent to the existing facility in the same neighborhood, I think you'll have the same struggles. And then we did determine back there, even if we bought up a few homes, assuming people wanted to sell, we might not have enough room still, right? That site was pretty
Well, and there's other
restrictive.
challenges there too, with the underground stream and being in a floodplain and.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
like, and none of these others I looked at as I revisited the packet,
Mm-hmm.
none of them really jump out at me.
Yeah.
So, and it's sad because that other West Street, gosh, we offered the guy probably 7-8 times more than what he paid for it. And
Well, way more than it was worth.
yeah,
So,
so.
yeah, that is, it's just disappointing. I think that we negotiated in earnest and we were fair with that, and it just didn't go our way. But, I certainly would support staff going back and inquiring and finding out a little bit more about that site off of 28th there where Menards was historically.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, we were always thinking maybe of keeping the fleet facility near our existing DPW facility, right? Knowing that it's in a floodplain and so on and so forth, but maybe just thinking about that the other way, that if we do build a fleet facility in one location, maybe in the future, the other facility can move further towards the fleet facility, you know, rather than, so, you never know what properties are gonna come up or what's gonna be available in the future, but,
Would there be, I mean, I guess, think of the logistics of this. I was just thinking about this out of the box a little bit. I mean, knowing how the DPW is laid out now, obviously the salt shed is there, the equipment garages are there and stuff. Some of that stuff is probably even more difficult to move around, but, you know, would we ever get, is that site that we have today, with the exception of the office, we could never, I guess, put a new fleet facility on that site and then look at moving the office, could we? I mean, maybe that's something easier to move than, do we need less, or do we not have enough land to start with down there?
But that office doesn't take that much space.
Not really. I mean, that's really,
right. Yeah, I think a lot of it is garage space. That would be the other thing
well, and they
with
need
this
the
one,
storage too. I
Right.
mean,
The storage was.
even the salt shed and stuff, to
Right.
remove and rebuild that is a
Right.
terrible task as well. So I feel like we need to keep continuing to move forward with a plan for a fleet maintenance facility, because it's not only got a specific use, but it's a slightly separate use from everything else that happens at DPW. So,
I think, would this committee be okay then authorizing the engineering department to look at the Menards property?
yeah, I'd be interested to know. I mean, if those findings come back such that we need to talk about what he learns in closed session, I think that would be appropriate. I mean, we don't want to get too far down the road with the process, and then, you know, that makes the
Yeah.
negotiation more difficult if we're interested in it, so.
And my other question would be too, is with all the work that we have with Barry Entos and invested into this, would those plans with that size of a building fit on that, or would we have to start over from scratch in there?
Yeah, definitely not from scratch. I think probably from scratch would be the civil work, you know, the site work and access and driveways and things. But the actual building and everything that went into that, which was the majority of the work, is, you know, we could just pick that building up and try to work it on the
Because
site.
I noticed there seems to me I read something in the packet about it might be limited for turnaround space for the vehicles if we go down there.
Yeah, I think that's just because of the odd shape, you know, in the back where it kind of gets to a point, but we really wouldn't know that. It's a possibility until we tried to lay some things out on there.
Okay.
So,
Well, and the big problem with turning stuff around really is fire equipment, right? Because of the length. I mean, some of their stuff is so large that really is the big fleet problem, right? I mean, most of the other equipment is shorter.
right, and we do have a tractor trailer, you know, with the low
Oh,
boy
okay.
and stuff, and then depending on what's coming in for deliveries
Delivery.
and stuff
Oh, yeah,
like that.
sure. I
So,
see.
Yep.
Alder Henke?
Thanks. What are the rules with right-of-ways as far as like over ramp, or the on-ramp spaces and stuff? Because there's a big triangle just to the south of that too, where that ramp goes over it. I don't know who would be
I
stepping
think
on getting in
eons
there.
ago, there
or-
was a
That
car
dry
dealership
pond,
in
right?
there.
Yeah.
That's owned by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and that's a big stormwater facility.
Oh,
So that carries the floodwaters when we get a big rain in Wausau.
from that flyover stuff?
Well,
their
from that
stuff?
whole area when it was developed, it's actually an overflow for that, if you look on the far north part of your paper, the right side, upper right, that stormwater pond overflows into this dry pond area during a
Oh.
large rainfall event.
I see.
So it's really I don't think you could touch that unless we're gonna move their stormwater, but that's a big area to try and move.
So then, would you like a motion and possibly a second to,
I don't think I need a motion. I mean, I think if
To
the
go ahead.
committee's okay with me.
okay.
I
Move in that
think we could
direction.
agree by consensus. I'm all for him at least reaching out and talking to somebody.
Okay. Alder Gisselman, you have any comment? Okay. All right, then I guess we will direct the engineering department to go look into the Menards property for the
Yeah.
fleet maintenance facility.
Will do.
And with that, we reach item 9.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn by Alder Henke, second by Alder Gisselman. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Thank you, and you all have a great evening.
I don't know.